The president heads to the border today after 2 years of complaints that he's ignoring the growing crisis there. It's an issue that has put Democrats in a tough political spot. Many in the president's own party now publicly and privately pressing him for more help. Joining me now, California Democratic Congressman Khanna. Congressman, welcome back to Fox News Sunday.
Thank you, Shannon. Happy New Year to you and to your viewers.
And to you as well. Okay, let's start at the border. The president is going there today. We have record-breaking numbers of people showing up illegally. I want to play something that the vice president said just months ago, followed by a man who talked to our Griff Jenkins, who admits he came here illegally.
The border is secure.
It's open, not closed. The border is open. Everybody believes that the border is open. It's open because we enter, we come in, free. No problem.
But it's open for you to come illegally, right?
Illegally, yes, illegally. That's true.
So nearly 2.4 million people in the last fiscal year came to the southern border illegally. That's not even counting the gotaways, as we call them. Arguably influenced by this message, as that man was, that they can't actually come here and get across the border. Does the White House now own this?
Well, Shannon, there's no doubt that there is a problem at the border, and President Biden recognizes it, and it's common sense. We need to secure the border, but also have the humanity. Now, you've written actually very powerfully about Jesus and Joseph and Mary and their journey where they escaped King Herod from prosecution. And you have compared that to Ukrainian refugees and the obligation that we have to mothers fleeing when their kids' lives are at stake. And I think we as a nation need to have an obligation to people who are refugees to file for asylum. And we also need a secure border. And I wish we could come together on that.
Yeah, and you bring up this point of compassion. I think America is a very compassionate people, and we are built on immigration, but there are real concerns about whether it's compassionate to encourage people, you know, even if it is indirectly, to come here when we have the highest number of people who died at the border trying to pass in the last fiscal year that we've ever seen. We know women and children are raped, they are trafficked. I mean, this creates a situation that is not safe or compassionate for people.
Well, Shannon, I know you have that compassion because I've read your excellent writing on it. And I guess what the president now is saying, and I hope we could get some bipartisan consensus on this, is we need to distinguish between people who are coming here just for economic reasons and people who are really fleeing persecution. He's saying, okay, people need to file this application online so that before they come. Now, what Congress needs to do is provide the resources for people to process the asylum claims for the border security. And that is something that Congress has to do. People say, is it going to cost money? Yes, it's going to cost money. But that is what we need to do to secure our border and be compassionate.
So the president made some changes and announcements on Thursday about some of the changes to seeking asylum and how this is going to be processed. In certain countries, we'll have more opportunity for people to come, but they have to stay in their home country and go through the process. He's taken a lot of heat from the right, but now the left, some of them were not very happy about what he rolled out on Thursday. Democratic Senator Bob Menendez's office said it was disastrous and inhumane. So one of those things is Title 42, which has been used as a COVID emergency to turn people away. This administration has argued both for and against it. It's tied up in court. The Supreme Court will hear a case on it in March. In the meantime, Justice Gorsuch wrote a dissent against keeping Title 42 in place and said this: the current border crisis is not a COVID crisis, and courts should not be in the business of perpetuating administrative edicts designed for one emergency only because elected officials have failed to address a different emergency. So how can this administration now justify using policies that it absolutely ripped the last administration apart for using?
I agree with Justice Gorsuch. I don't think we should be making the excuse that people are denied asylum because of COVID policy. I mean, that may have been the case a year and a half ago. It's certainly not the case now. I think every person who has a legitimate asylum claim should be able to make that claim, but we should make sure that it's legitimate. It's not just economic reasons, and that is why it's actually Congress that needs to act to strengthen the border, to have more border enforcement, but also to have more people who can process these claims. The president is saying, let's try to get as many people doing these claims online. And obviously, as a representative from Silicon Valley, I think if we could get people making these applications before they make that treacherous journey, that would be an improvement.
You know, it's a very small percentage who actually are granted their asylum claims here. So we are potentially talking about millions of people who are coming to the border, some of them coached by coyotes and cartels and smugglers and traffickers to say things about asylum, but ultimately probably millions of them will be turned away. So we're talking about a small percentage. What do you say about those others who are showing up, coming across the border, and this administration has allowed nearly 4.3 million of those to happen in its first 2 years?
Well, Sharon, first of all, some of them, many of them, as you know, are getting turned away. Yes, they are being apprehended. Some get away, but many of them are then being sent back if they are here not through the legal process. The second point is that we need also comprehensive immigration reform. We passed it in the House where we said if people are coming here to do agriculture work, there should be a system where they can come across the border legally. They're not breaking property. They're not risking their lives. They don't automatically become citizens. They have a status, and then they can figure out whether to go back or whether to stay in the country. Why can't we get common sense reform like that? That's something actually originally President George W. Bush floated. So we need a system for those who want to come to America for economic reasons, for bettering their lives, contributing to our economy, for them to do that in a way that is legal. We don't have that right now because we haven't passed comprehensive immigration reform.
Yeah, and it doesn't seem like there's a lot of appetite to get that done or to do a heavy lift on any major pieces of legislation when it comes to the issue of immigration. You have been there and watched and voted repeatedly over the last few days to get to a new House Speaker as Republicans work this out. At one point, there was a conversation, at least you were quoted as having, and you've said on our air, I think, even, that you could have been part of a compromise candidate if there was the right person to come together to get a speaker in place. One of the things you said was a sticking point, though, is you didn't want any part of an agreement that would limit the ability to raise the debt ceiling. The New York Times, reporting on this Saturday, said this: the federal government spends far more money each year than it receives in revenues, producing a budget deficit that is projected to average in excess of $1 trillion a year for the next decade. Now, Congressman, you and I could never get away with handling our books that way. Why should Congress?
Well, look, is the deficit of $32 trillion an issue? Of course. There are places I may actually agree with Republicans on defense cuts. I mean, I think it is absurd that we're going to have almost $1 trillion defense budget. And if they're going to look at that and make certain cuts, then let's have that conversation. But the debt ceiling is a different issue. If, Shannon, you or I owed people money, we wouldn't suddenly say, oh, too bad, we're not going to pay our debts. We'd pay our debts. And that's all the debt ceiling is about. Are we going to pay our debts? Does the United States of America's word matter? We should pay our debts. We should increase the debt ceiling. And then let's have the debate about where you want to cut spending. Yeah. But don't make the United States default on our word.
Well, you and I can't print money either. That's the difference in our budgets, too. I want to quickly, before we go, because you have been an outspoken voice on tech issues, you're one of the only Democrats who came up in the Twitter releases who had actually sent an email in at one point to say, we have free speech concerns, or at least they're being raised here in Washington about the suppression of the Hunter Biden laptop story. There are more revelations now. Missouri's got a case going where they say that the White House, the Biden administration, was responsible in some way, their allegation, for suppressing the First Amendment rights of people by reaching out directly and coordinating with Twitter about messages they didn't agree with and wanting to see those blunted or taken down. The Missouri Attorney General's office tweeted this yesterday. We now have hard evidence that President Biden's administration colluded with social media companies to censor differing viewpoints. You've raised these concerns in the past. Does the White House owe Americans an explanation?
Well, I think there should be full transparency. I believe that these social media platforms should have all viewpoints, even viewpoints I disagree with. That's what I wrote to Twitter in private email correspondence that was then leaked. But there needs to be transparency, not just about the Biden administration, but also what previous administrations have done. But, Shannon, I do want to say something. I believe most people in the FBI, most people in law enforcement, most people in the CIA do an incredible job to keep our country safe. And I do not want to see the politicization or the disparagement of people who are risking their lives, literally, to keep us safe. And I really hope this Congress doesn't do that.
I agree. I think, as most Americans do, that those folks, we owe them a debt of gratitude. Our folks on the front lines in all kinds of law enforcement agencies, the vast majority of them, I think, are very honorable. Congressman, thank you very much for your time. It's great to chat with you today.
Thank you, Shannon.